Hey, Buddy SD Costume Guy. So here is part 2 update of the homemade pirate hook I'm trying to do. So I took the resin mixture, Bondo, whatever, JB Weld stuff that I had um, was not keeping that nut from moving. So I took some epoxy sculpt and I mixed the two components together and put it on the threads a little bit, but then I also sculpted it around here and let it dry for 24 hours, and it's like a rock on there right now. I may put some epoxy sculpt over this nut once everything's done. That way I can cover up that it is a nut or a metal nut and just make it one piece so it looks like it's one piece. But that epoxy sculpt, you can get that, I believe, on Amazon, and it's a two-part putty. You got to mix the two equal sizes, equal amounts. Mix it together, just mixing it with your hand, pushing it and twisting it and all that kind of stuff to get them into one. And then you have a pretty lengthy work time with it, and then you can get some water on your fingertip and you can smooth it out and you can sculpt it. And in about 24 hours, it's hard like a rock. You can sand it and drill it, and I've done it before. So that's how that turned out so far. So what I wanted to do is put a handle in here so I can hold on to it. And I had a piece of thin wood here, and I had put a dip inside here, and I put it together. But I noticed when I put the wood in here, I didn't have enough room to grab around it. So as you look here on my hand, it's further down to be more comfortable. So what I did was I put it inside here. Now it's a tight fit. I was gonna put a screw on both sides and hold them into place, but I'm not sure if I want to do that. I mean, it's pretty sturdy, and I'm not having, it doesn't move in there. It's pretty, I mean, I got it in there almost the exact same size that it needs to be by just sanding it with some sandpaper after I had cut off a chunk. So it's in there pretty good. I might not have anything, but when my hand's comfortable now, then I can put this on top, and it seems to be pretty good. So if you remember, I was going to do this. It was going to be longer, but I think it's too long. I think that's was way too long. I mean, of course, my hand's holding it here, but it would have been up further inside, and it would have went higher up on my arm. But I think this is more, get my hand back in. I think this is more reasonable. And if I have a shirt or jacket, it'll be covering this bottom part anyway. So my next idea was, well, first of all, I sanded off all the large pieces that were sticking out. Any names, I gotta work on the name a little bit more up here. I know it's gonna come back and haunt me if I don't get it all the way off, because when I paint, it might come on there. So trying to get an idea. I went to the 99-cent store, and they just happened to have this rope on this. It even said nautical rope, so I thought maybe about wrapping a piece of it around it or something. I don't know. It was only 99 cents, so maybe use it for another project if I don't use it for this. And then I thought, you know what? Let's paint this up to look like wood. And that's going to be my next step. And my idea is going to be, first of all, I sanded this pretty good, so I can primer it and that the paint will stick. I think my best bet is going to be to glue this on next, so that what I want to do is put some wood grain lines. If you can see on here, I use this as a test piece. I put some wood grain lines, or my attempt. I just did it real quick to see if it worked, and I did this with a soldering iron. This is the box for the soldering iron, and it has all these little tips on the side. And the one that I'm using is not listed there. It's on the other side. There it is. It's a stencil. And I just ran it across there. And the thing gets hot. I mean, it gets super hot. I don't know if it actually says on here. Oh, it says up to 900 degrees. So, yeah, don't touch yourself with it. But I just dragged it along here and made some lines. Excuse me. I'll probably sand it a little bit. This is going to be my test piece to make sure it's going to work. I'm going to sand it a little bit so it's a little bit smoother, but the lines will still be deep. I think when I primer it and then hit it with a light colored paint like tan or almond or something like that, and then go over it with a burnt umber color and then kind of wipe it away, I think the darkness will stay in the grooves and it'll look like wood grain. Now I know this because I've done it on a baseball bat, a plastic baseball bat that already had wood grain on it. I painted it with primer, I painted it with the almond color, and then I wiped over it with some burnt umber acrylic paints, and it made it look like wood. I mean, people even said, hey, how did you do that? I said, well, luckily the bat, even though it was black and plastic, it already had a wood grain texture to it, so I didn't have to go through the whole bat and do that. Luckily this piece is just pretty small and I can run it down the sides, but I think what I want to do is when I run the line, I kind of want to make it one continuous line up, or something like that effect, so that this looks like one piece. And I may have to come in here and fill it with that epoxy sculpt to get rid of that line. I'll have to see what happens or what comes up. I could cheat and put a piece of maybe metal, make it rusty or something, and I just kind of wrap it around and I could cover that seam up. I'll have to take a look and see what I can find. I may have to use EVA foam or something other than that. I could put get these little plastic nuts and bolts and cut the heads off the bolts, and I can put them on here too and make it look like it's holding it together or something. Well, we'll see. It's a learning process, so bear with me. So that's what I'm thinking it's going to look like. So my next step is going to be to glue this on, and that's going to have to be at least all day because I need to make sure it's really on there. So we'll be back, or I'll be back with as much as I can get done on the next step. So when I come back, I'll hopefully have this glued together well. Think about an idea of either covering this up or filling it and sanding it down. The only problem I think is if I fill it with epoxy sculpt, even though it's just a thin spot, I think when I drag the hot soldering iron through the plastic, it'll burn, it'll make the wood grain, but then when I get to that rocky hard epoxy sculpt, it might not go into it and make the line continue. So it might be a good idea to find some type of a metal thing that wraps around. It doesn't have to be one piece. I can even space it out a couple to make it look like, hey, this is two pieces of wood, and building this for the pirate or whatever back in those days or whatever, they needed something to join these two parts together, and I'll just make it all work out. I think that's the only tips that I have right now on this, so I'll go ahead and end the video. Oh, sorry if this was a little boring. My other concern was too, this piece is where the handle is, because this way feels nice. I don't know where the orientation of the hook's going to be. I got to make sure when I, either this is all the way down, so I got to make sure that's in the spot that I want it. So here, which way do I want the hook? Do I want it facing like that? Do I want it to be like this? Do I want it to, I don't think I want it to be up towards my face. I think this might be the best idea, like if you're trying to hook and pull something toward you. So I'm thinking with the pole in there like that. Well, the good thing is too is me keeping that piece in there, not permanently screwed in or anything like that. I can move it around if I need to, so that'll work. So what I think I'll do is I'll get this glued up, do some more sanding, then I'll show you what I'm doing with the lines. I won't show you every single line. I mean, this took me just like a minute, just dragging it across, not making any straight lines, if you can see on there. But like I said, once I paint it with the light color and then hit it with a dark color, all that dark color should stay in the lines and it'll make it look like a wood grain. So that's my idea so far. So there you have it, and that's what I got so far. So here's an update on the pirate hook. I've used this stuff, epoxy sculpt. It's a two-piece putty, and I formed it around the
nut that was on the bottom of this hook, so I can cover it up. I made like a temporary cardboard washer because I don't want this to cure on top of the plastic and be permanent. I want them to not I want it to not be permanent. So I want to be able to remove that hook after everything dries so I can install some other stuff and still work on this without the hook being on there. So just mix these two putty pieces together, got my fingertip wet with some water and smoothed it out to what I liked, and that's what it is so far. I added some holes down here around the bottom because I have some plastic bolts that I got from Lowe's that I'm going to add in there, and I have a metal washer that I bought that's currently drying. I pounded it out with a hammer, and I worked on it. Let me see if I can find that piece. Yeah, so here's that washer. I got that washer. It was like a zinc color, metal, shiny, stainless color. Sanded it a little bit, and then I started pounding it out with a ball hammer just to make some marks in it. Use some primer, use some gold paint or copper colored paint. I'm going to add some sealant. I'm going to add some rust color to it. And then I'm going to put this on the top, and then the hook will go through here and just be a decorative piece on there. And these are the plastic bolts that I'm going to put around the bottom of, or the base of that piece. They're where I drilled the holes. I've already marked it to where I need to cut them. But I want to paint them also to make sure they looked not plastic. But I felt this was easier to use because I could paint them and then easily cut them from the inside to make them the right length so they're not all the way through. But that's what I got so far. And that little metal washer that I was painting is going to go underneath here. Unfortunately, it's not the same size as this cardboard one, which would have been great, but it'll still work. And then these little plastic bolts will just go into here, and I'll paint them and make them look like rust. There's another one here. And I'll put these all the way around. I may end up putting some more of these up here, but stagger them so they're not lined up perfectly, but more here. Unfortunately, they only had a set of pack of 2, and they only had 2, so I only got 4. They didn't have enough to do any more on the top, so I'll have to go back later. But there you have it. There's a little bit of an update on the Pirate Hook.